Hi, Jim Evans. Welcome to Loose Change. As always, please listen to the fine print. You should. Thanks for joining us. We have a great show and a great guest who will join us in just a couple moments. But first, what's been going on, Greg? It happened again. I was at a store around the corner from here, and I don't want to mention the name, but that Sheetz is always busy. I'll tell you that for sure. And there was a guy in front of me at the counter. I was waiting to check out, and he's looking at the cigarettes, which were on the wall in the back, and they had a disclaimer on top, if you may have seen, and he's reading it. And it says, cigarette smoking causes more deaths per year than vehicle accidents, heart disease, alcoholism, and, several more combined. And the guy's looking at it, and he says to the clerk, well, hey, I'm reading that. What about if you're bowling and you slip and fall down and hit your head, but the ball flies out, goes down the lane, and knocks all the pins down? And she was like, I don't think so. He said, give me a pack of Lucky Strikes. And to go waste for that. Great. That actually happened. Yeah, right. What else? Greg, I'll tell you what else went a long way was I finally got a car. Finally got a car. I've talked to you about that after an extensive search. And I'm like you, I was looking for something specific. And I told the sales consultant, I'd like to be frank. I want something that really stands out, and maybe with some mustard colored trim. And here it was. That was the Joey Chestnut edition, so I almost went with it, but I decided to go with something else, and here it is. The Acura RDX, great car, and really excited about that. Now, I want to say thanks so much to my sales consultant, great guy, Tony Callender. He was fun to work with and very sports knowledgeable, as was Chad, who helped me out as well. And I want to thank both of those guys for making the whole process run so smooth down at Marysville Honda. So, I took a little bit of a trip. But thanks again, guys. Appreciate all your help. Well, we are now into baseball season. That's always great. And, everyone around here following the Guardians and the Pirates, and hopefully they have great seasons. I was checking out the Major League payrolls, and for Cleveland, it was listed at $85 million for this year and $78 million for Pittsburgh. And you combine those two and break it down, it's basically the cost of 3 dozen eggs right now. And maybe throw in a tank of gas. I don't know. That might cover it. Maybe. I read Greg, where NASA has plans ambitious plans to explore vast new empty space. And I thought, that's okay, I'm sure, but be a lot easier and cheaper just to go to the Southern Park Mall. There's plenty of empty space there, that's for sure. If you've been out there to see that, wow, I hope they are able to get that worked out possibly soon. Speaking of that, word from Washington has been that they're going to eliminate the pennies. But apparently Macy's is okay. They're going to hang in there. What's that? It was the penny. I read where archaeologists in China say they discovered a 5,000-year-old tomb of a prehistoric king. And apparently there was a lot of items in there that were still intact. They said they found various artifacts, pottery, and 4 tickets to a Rolling Stones concert. So that's a great find, that's for sure. Stick around, we're going to take a break, and Andy Vlajkovich will join us next, right here on Loose Change. You want to walk out?
Things change. One thing you can count on is that Armstrong always will be Armstrong. We've stood by our name, from our humble beginnings in 1946 through the millions spent expanding fiber broadband in our communities. We've never changed our name to run from our reputation. We've established trust by simply putting our people, customers, and services first. It's a practice that holds true and will continue at Armstrong.
Welcome back to Loose Change. I'm Jim Evans. You see, I wasn't kidding. We are joined now by the head coach of the Canfield boys basketball team, none other than Andy Vlajkovich. Coach, great to see you. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
And, well, your first year as head coach of the Cardinals, you were back the year before with Coach Cullen for an assistant role. And I guess now that the dust has settled, your thoughts on how this past season went for you?
Well, that was a great first year. Came up a little short, and I know we talked a little bit about that Warrensville loss, and it was a group that really had high expectations. Our staff had high expectations. Our players had high expectations. So when you lose maybe a little prematurely, it doesn't always sit well with you. But that group. One thing about that group from our senior class, wonderful senior class, seven strong, all the way down through our sophomores and juniors. They gave us everything. I mean, they gave the execution, the effort. We didn't lose for a lack of effort or assignments or execution. We didn't win because we didn't put the ball in the hole, and you can never blame kids for that. That's just how the game goes sometimes. Yeah. But overall, 21 wins and a district championship.
Bad.
You can never complain about that.
Your description of your team, that's Canfield basketball. Yeah. Play hard, play smart. When you played, Coach Cullen, that's the deal there.
That group, that senior group, and we had two really good juniors who contributed in Bryce Roberts and Landon Shina, and a couple of sophomores that got some spot minutes here. But we were driven by that senior class. They had a lot of experience. Drew Shapiro was out there for 3 years, all-time leading assist leader. Jake DeLisio, I'm not sure a kid plays harder in the area than Jake DeLisio. Ben Weaver, Ray McCune. Nick Levanti was a kid who came on really strong for us, played JV as a junior and ended up having an outstanding year. And Angelo DeLucia, big man off the bench, and Nick Folsom. So we had a great senior class. We love those guys. I think they set the foundation moving forward for what it means to be a Cardinal and kind of the commitment that they gave. We were in the weight room from the day I got hired and all through June and summer camps and all that. And the level of commitment we got from that senior class was second to none.
Was there a particular point in the season, a game or a stretch where you felt, all right, it's really come together for us, and we're really step on the gas from that point?
I think every season, especially basketball season, is so long.
Yes.
It's December to March, and you're going to have some ebbs and flows. But I thought that the win at Ursuline early in the season kind of told a lot of us, our staff kind of told our guys, like, hey, yeah, we're right there with anybody. And then, we had a couple blips on the radar here and there, but then I thought, middle of the league, we had Fitch at home and Howland at home, and we won pretty convincingly. And
I remember seeing that.
And so, but I think that Ursuline win kind of is what catapulted us to believe that 20 wins, a league title was possible, although that didn't come true. But the district title was possible, and we could make a run, deep run in the tournament. But that was kind of I thought the Ursuline win was the catalyst for that.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel it went for you back in the head role?
Good. I think we came in as a staff, and we really took charge of some stuff in our program. We cleaned up our youth program from grades 3 to 6. I have an amazing staff. Dylan O'Hara is my right-hand man. Chris, who was a great player. Gerard's dad was a great coach at Liberty. Chris Brooks, great young kid. He's just a puppy. He's just a baby. He's 22 years old, 23 years old. And but he's our JV coach, and he has the maturity of he's been doing this for 10, 12 years. And then Evan Standahar, another Gerard standout from 10 years ago or so, who does a great job with our freshmen, Brady Clark and Vince Procopio. And so I think the way we cleaned up some of the youth program, I think the way that we've instituted kind of a year-round gig. I got a Cardinal from 07, Joe Carbon, who does a lot of our little kid stuff and with our little dribblers, and they were kind of a hit in town at halftime. So, I thought we got a lot done in that first year, and I think if you get a lot done in the program and win 21 games, you got to be somewhat satisfied with it.
What was the difference? Because this is your fourth stint as head coach, starting at Roosttown, then Harding, then Camp McGinley. But you came back with Coach Cullen as an assistant. Mm-hmm. So how was that perspective from the one side to the other?
I thought I needed it, to be honest with you. I mean, it kind of gave me, because when you're the assistant, you're sort of the good cop, players coach, and you're kind of the bridge between the kids and the head coach. And I think when you've been your own boss, so to speak, for the betterment of 12 years or so, to take that role back and kind of hear more of a player's perspective, and then kind of step back. And to Coach Cullen's credit, he gave me a lot of leeway and a lot of say and a pretty strong voice. So I was, I had all the advantages of being an assistant, but also some of the advantages of being the head guy. And I think it just gave me a different perspective in terms of, how kids are and what kids talk about. Because the truth, when I was head coach, and you're always kind of sometimes you got to be the muscle and the tougher of the guys, and you're kind of dad, and sometimes the assistant's kind of the good parent, and so it just gave me a different perspective, and I really needed that.
When you were at a point in your life or your career when you realized, okay, this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to go on and coach, was it the idea, maybe at least in the back of your head, that you'd be here doing what you're doing right now, or it just played out that way?
No, I think that was always a goal, to be honest with you, and it just didn't happen until a little maybe later than I wanted, but I think everything happens for a reason, and I wouldn't trade any of those experiences.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, we weren't super talented at Rootstown, but I learned so much. I worked for some great bosses. I had some great kids. We just, didn't have the talent to be as successful as maybe we wanted, and then to take, pretty much what are 2 state urban powerhouses, and learning from Steve for a year, and having the Harding, Steve Arnold having the Harding job, and we had some nice teams there and had some nice runs, and then really to go to Canton and be involved with the biggest program in the state, playing the best facility in an amazing league. I learned a lot and learned a ton, and I think I've tried to take some of what I've learned and now kind of apply it to where I'm at and kind of what I know and kind of what I'm familiar with.
You mentioned Canton, of course, and everybody does their thing here and then moves to that regional level. And man, the bar gets raised when you get to that point, several steps, if not more than that.
The bar gets raised. I mean, I was watching that Buchtel Glenville game before our game, and we had beaten Glenville the year before in the district championship before we then beat Warrensville in the regional semifinal. And I'm watching that game, and I'm just like, man, this is some high level basketball. But we were there a year ago, and so it is definitely, when you get to the regional level and eventually the state level, regardless of division, and I know they've gone to 7 divisions now, but regardless of division, you better be playing some serious hoops come mid to late March.
What are your thoughts on this 7 division setup now?
Well, I think the biggest thing that's taken away is, we kind of talked about this before, it's taken the state weekend out of it, because they're playing the semifinals now the week before. They don't have the space to play what would be 21 games or whatever that number would be, or 14 games. So the simple fact that you now have the state semis at one location and the state finals at another location, I don't know. I mean, I understand why they did it. I just think it breaks with a lot of tradition, and it kind of upsets the calendar a little bit. And in some ways, it's probably not beneficial to kids and coaches. And I just talked with some people last night, some coaches. We were on a group text and just talking about how the state tournament weekend at Columbus was the best.
Oh,
and you'd have 12 games down there in a 3-day span, and and we've lost that with the 7 divisions. We've lost that with the Dayton situation. I think they're trying to make some changes to maybe go to 2 venues down there, but I know this. At some point, I just embrace it because I know I'm not going to change it. So we're just gonna. It's a new era, and we you either got to get on board with it or because we're probably not going to change it.
Do you think? Have you heard any talk that it might move back to Columbus?
I don't think so. I've heard no to that. I'm
Okay.
not sure that the OHSA is welcomed at Ohio State. At least that's what's out there, and it's kind of sad because it's centrally located, and Columbus is a great town, and not that Dayton's not, but there was nothing better than those weekends, and the 3rd weekend of March, and seeing all your coaching buddies from around the state.
He's not kidding. If you've not been to the state, well, at least those times, that whole weekend, just electric. And I had the great opportunity to call some state semifinal and championship games, and just to be a part of that, man, that was really special for me. There was nothing like it. But do you think, though, the 7 division setup, though, perhaps opens the door some for some smaller teams to maybe get further into it than they would otherwise, playing perhaps bigger schools?
Yeah, I think who it really helps is those smaller Division I teams that are now 3 and 2.
Okay.
I mean, Perry, excellent team, great story. I don't know if you follow them out of Stark County, but they were 8 and 13 and made it all the way to the state championship game. in Division II. They were Division I. I don't know if that run happens, and that's not to take away from anything they did.
Right.
That's just, I think they would admit that too. And Louisville had a great team, and they beat St. Ignatius, who ended up going, to the Final Four. But they won the Division III state championship, and they certainly could have won the Division I state championship, but I think it was a much more difficult road. So it does help, some of those. And for us in Division IV, it's pretty much all Division II, the old Division II.
Yeah,
So a lot of the teams that we had to play to get out are all the same teams we had to play. I think it does help Division VI and VII because you get some of the state powers like Lutheran East and Richmond Heights kind of out of those smaller divisions where those have been traditional powers up there for a while. And in Division III and IV, it was hard for a lot of those teams to beat those teams, but now they're Division V. So it helps some schools, it hurts other schools, which if you go back to the old model, it helps some schools, it hurts other schools. And I thought we were largely unaffected by it.
When you, like you just mentioned, and obviously it's a long season. When you get to that point, you're moving on into, you get through the district and then into regional play where maybe the bar is raised, as we talked about. Is your approach coaching any different at all, even tweaking things, taking other things into consideration, or is it business as usual?
No, you'll tweak things, but it's also business as usual. I would say it's like a 90-10 thing. I mean, you have to tweak and adjust for your opponent, but I think when you get away from doing what you're really good at,
right.
I think it sends a message to your kids like, well, what we did all year wasn't good enough, but you also got to be smart about that. And personnel and scouting becomes really important. Maybe you try to exploit something, a weakness or whatever, and go to some different stuff. But that's out of what you saw, not just out of fear or anything. And I thought we actually, against Warrensville, I thought we executed really well. Our guys ran some great stuff and did some great things, and we just didn't put the ball in the basket.
Yeah.
I thought they did. They bought into the game plan, and I thought our staff put together a good plan. And the ball's got to go in the basket, and sometimes it doesn't, and you live with it.
Does it really comes down to you still have to do what you do, and you take into consideration what you're matched up against and things you'll see, but you still got to do your deal. I mean,
and that's probably where I've changed the most in my 15 years of doing this. Was I used to be so obsessed with what everybody else did, and now I'm a lot more obsessed with what we do, and that's probably the biggest evolution for me personally in my coaching career. I let my assistants worry about a lot of the scouting report stuff, and I'm focused on the Cardinals.
We have to take a break. You can hang around for a few minutes, can't you?
Sure.
All right,
Absolutely.
We'll be back more with Andy Vlajkovich right after we do this.
Supercharge your internet. Only Zoom Extreme from Armstrong combines unlimited data with whole home Wi-Fi at the fastest speeds possible. Zoom Extreme from Armstrong.
All right. Coming down in 3, 2, 1 again. Back on Loose Change, along with Andy Vlajkovich. I'm Jim Evans, and you had the great opportunity to play for and then coach with Coach Cullen, one of the greats in the area. And
no doubt.
You can't speak enough about his influence, I'm sure, and I just admired the way he coached when I got a chance to see games or announce games, and boy, it was just he was just above the fray for me. So your thoughts on him?
Well, he's been a mentor of mine. He's been a colleague of mine. I've leaned on him my whole coaching career, calling him, talking with him helping me with problems. Then to come back and work with him was awesome. And obviously I played for him. We always maintained that relationship, and just all the guidance that he's given me over the years meant a lot. And to follow him and kind of follow in his footsteps, means a lot to me personally. And Coach was ahead of the curve on a lot of things. He was always I think sometimes a lot of coaches get stuck in their ways, and Coach was always evolving without giving away his core principles. And that was something I always admired about him. And, he never got stuck in the mud in terms of like what he was going to run offensively or new ways to teach a defensive concept. Mm-hmm. And, I think the game changes a lot. I mean, the game's really changed in the last 10 to 15 years.
Has.
Some for the good, some maybe not, depending on your viewpoint on it. But I think he got changed with the times, and that was always kind of something I really took from him.
What some of the changes that you have, I guess, embraced in the way the game is evolved?
Well, I mean, I think with how athletic guys are, and I think you see this at the NBA. I hear a lot of guys, they typically are on the above 40 side of it. Like they shoot too many threes, they shoot too many threes.
Yeah.
They are so long at the rim now, with guys being, Wemby at 7'3", and the
right.
athleticism at the rim is so great right now that if you don't make threes, you can't score it at the rim. And the game's bigger, faster, and stronger than it's ever been. I'm not always saying that equals better quality, but you have to make threes. And I think the high school game has kind of become the same way. I mean, if you have to make shots in order to win, and and the other thing is just the nature of like AAU and trainers and all that stuff that goes into it. Parents and our parents were great this year. But I think, nationwide, statewide, I think, you get a lot of parental involvement. It's because no generation's ever invested more in their kids than the current generation. And the money spent, the hours traveling, they want a return on their investment. And I think, communication with parents is something that I've really embraced, and try to meet with every family before the season, try to meet with every family after the season, and kind of be really clear because, now more than ever, go back to like maybe my grandparents' generation. You're lucky to play catch or whatever, shoot in the driveway. And then, my dad spent a lot of time with me, but then compared to today, my 10-year-old's traveling to Canton and this and that. And I just think the amount of time and investment that parents today put in, they want a return on it. And when they don't get it, sometimes that creates frustration. So that's been an adjustment, but I think we've navigated those waters, to the best of our ability.
You mentioned the community, the school support you get there. That's really a valuable thing for you, I'm sure.
And it was incredible this year. I actually put a thing out on Instagram, Facebook about the crowds, because I was so grateful that our kids got to play. I remember playing there in the late 90s, and we'd play Struthers with Ricky McFadden, and Kevin Culp was our guy, and I show up to the gym at 4:30 and it was sold out, and standing room only, and it kind of, it didn't quite feel like that level, but it kind of got back to those old days when, we had some really, really great crowds. And we've done some things in our program with our Little Dribblers program. Joe Carvin leads our Little Dribblers. We probably have 40, 50 kindergarten to second graders out there doing a routine that Joe put together. And, and that was kind of a community hit. And, we've kind of reestablished our youth program and really organized it. Have some really good guys on our board, led by Tony Biondillo, our president, who really helped me kind of restructure our youth program, because it was a lot. It was involved, but it was just a little disorganized, and so we kind of cleaned it up a little bit. And so, those are some of the things I just thought our program needed, and we were able to do it in year one, and hopefully that pays dividends down the road.
And then you had mentioned during the break there about just having the community support involved with that, that whole show you had, have time with other folks involved to talk about that.
Yeah, the community support's been amazing. I mean, they've embraced everything we've done, and they've embraced the brand of basketball we played. I mean, the number of compliments I got just about, the brand of basketball we play, how unselfish our kids were. That was probably the number one thing that everybody talked about when they would talk about our team, was like that because you can do all those community things. You can have those Little Dribblers. You can have the youth program structured. You can do all those things, but at the end of the day, if you're not putting a quality product on the floor,
right,
that's just window dressing. And so that stuff's gonna eventually like come to fruition in the future with all that young kid stuff. But you gotta win. You gotta win now.
Yeah.
And a lot of people mentioned early on, like, well, you're glad to be home, or you're glad to be home. And I sort of jokingly said, if we don't win, this ain't gonna be home anymore. And so, because it's at the end of the day, I tell a lot of people this. I really have two jobs. You got to treat kids right, and turn them into men, and you got to win basketball games. And that's kind of the attitude I wake up with on a daily basis.
It is about the kids, though. Every coach, and it's kind of obvious, but at this level, it's about dealing with these young men and life lessons through sports, and that's really a big part of it for you, isn't it?
Well, in this great senior class that I feel really connected to, it's kind of been an inside joke with us. I'm making them kind of return to an old tradition at the banquet on Sunday, where they have to speak, they have to publicly speak. And that tradition went away, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago for whatever reason. But I'm kind of bringing it back, because I want kids to learn how to get up in front of an audience, and they're like, I want to do a video, and I want to do a video. And I'm like, listen, it'd be easy for me to tell you, let's do a video. That you're happy, I'm happy, whatever. But this is about kind of being uncomfortable, learning how to speak in front of a crowd.
Sure, everybody's
learning how to prepare, for this is kind of like a job interview of sorts, and kind of getting out of your comfort zone. So, that's a big, in all honesty, when I wake up every day, I think about like, what do I have to do to prepare, young men, and what do we have to do to win basketball games? And sometimes, once in a while, those rear their ugly heads against each other. Not often, but once in a while. But I think if you stick with those two core principles, I think you're always going to make, by and large, the right decision.
Sure. You mentioned the youth program, and to me, and I'm sure your goal is to have these kids, excited about playing basketball and maybe being part of the Canfield Cardinal program, and they want to come play basketball for you.
Yeah, and here's the hard part. We had 140 kids try out for essentially 8
Holy
teams.
cow.
And it's a town right now that has a lot of, parental involvement in a good way, and, a lot of kids want to be a part of it. We established like two teams in every grade. We kind of do the first half of the year where the kids are playing on split talented teams. And then that's just to develop as many kids as possible. And then the second half of the season, we kind of go with a little bit more of like A team, B team, or a travel team and a community team. But we've taken a lot of some of our travel teams, so we've gone to Canton and played against the Jacksons and the Greens, and we've gone to Cleveland, we've gone to Pittsburgh, just because I think we need that exposure. At the end of the day, we're going to be judged. We're going to be judged based on our level of play at the state level. Mm-hmm. So while we have great respect for the Valley and our schedule, I think getting our kids out of the area a little bit and going and seeing some different stuff is really important. So I've had a lot of help with that, though. We elected a board and have a whole 501c3 set up, and everything's it's kind of formal, which you need to, and because youth sports can get crazy, and those very same dads you need to coach that did a great job for us. I think sometimes without structure, it can get a little sloppy and it can get a little political, and that's not their fault. It was the lack of structure. Mm-hmm. So we really aimed hard to clean that up.
And there's a difference between, big difference, obviously, and you're on that good side of it. Maybe just having, let's say, a basketball team as opposed to a basketball program. And you certainly, have that going.
Well, I think that's where Coach Cullen, and ours looks a little different than maybe his did in the 90s, but ours has kind of evolved with the times. But he was ahead of the curve a lot. He had Saturday morning basketball, and he had, there was a lot, he had the young kids in the locker room, and he was always down there with those young guys. And so, we, as things have evolved, we tried to take that same format, but then kind of evolve it to today's standards, and because travel ball is big, and this league's big, and that league's big, and so maybe Saturday morning basketball with just an in-house doesn't always work for us, but it was the point of taking that concept and evolving it to modern times, and he was innovative in that way, and that was kind of what I alluded to earlier about, he always stayed up with the culture, he always stayed connected to his program. I remember being a fourth grader and being in Saturday morning basketball with Will Klusnick and Rod McCune and Ray McCune and those guys, and we looked up to them, and they coached us at Saturday morning, and I'm still friends with those guys. So, but that's why that program matters to me so much, because it impacted my life way more than on the floor.
Well, program obviously in great hands for sure. That looks really good too.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for your time, Andy.
Thank
Appreciate
you
you coming in.
it,
Great to see you as always, and best of luck in the future. And hopefully we get a chance to maybe get out and call some of your games. I don't know. We'll
Awesome.
see.
Great.
That'd be great.
Thanks.
Andy Vlajkovich. We'll be right back to wrap it up right after this. Well, that's got to do it for our show. Thanks so much to Andy Vlajkovich. Best of luck to you and your staff and the Cardinals basketball program. I also want to pass along happy birthday again to the great Denny Liebert. Hopefully he's up and at it before too long, and the best to he and his sister. And thanks as always to Greg Rote and all of you. And again, of course, you can check us out on YouTube here at Armstrong Loose Change. I'm Jim Evans. We'll catch you next time right here. We will, won't we?